Welcome to the Venture Cafe, everyone. Welcome those who are here for the first time ever. Welcome to the family. If you would like to ask a question, Tuni or Dennis, please feel free to use the chat box to do that. You can send a message that can be seen by everyone, or send a private message if you would like to keep your identity private. And with this, let me introduce our presenters, Tuni and Dennis. Tuni Schartner is the Executive Director of District Hall and Venture Cafe in Providence. She is also the founder of TS Consulting, a consulting company that helps businesses grow. She's the co-founder and managing director of the Hive RI, Southern Rhode Island's first co-working space. Tuni was the recipient of Rhode Island Small Business Journal 2016 Entrepreneurial Women to Watch Community Champion Award, Providence Business News Women in Business Award honoree in 2018, and the Rhode Island Blazer winner in nonprofit category just this year, 2020. Welcome, Tuni. With Tuni today, we have Dennis Lasko, who is the Fresh Supply Chain Innovation Manager at Ahold Delhaize, where he focuses on researching and integrating new fresh supply chain processes, tools, and technologies to support the growing needs of the Ahold Delhaize, a network of more than 2,500 grocery stores and omnichannel operations. And prior to that, he served as operations director at Wine Gallery Stores and founded Pantry, the first recipe kit retail store in the United States. Welcome, Dennis. I hope I did not say too much and you still have something to say about yourself to introduce yourself. So Tuni and Dennis, over to you.
Thank you. You know, Dennis, can you do me a favor? Because as you know, we met yesterday virtually, and I was thinking, what does Fresh Supply Chain Innovation Manager, for those attending and myself, if you could explain what that means, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So kind of the more we get into this new world of so many grocery competitors focusing on the online space and new competitors coming in to the online grocery space, the more we realize that physical retail and you know, grocery retail in general is going to differentiate itself through the fresh channel. So my job is really about building a supply chain that becomes more of a competitive advantage than a cost center. So looking at things like full traceability and transparency from the farm to the plate, understanding how that supply chain, how the events in the supply chain affect freshness. So things like temperature and humidity, what kind of technologies can we use to view and understand and respond to temperature events. Things like automating and streamlining quality control. So while you always have quality assurance and measurement, a vast majority of product is accepted by default. And just because the manual inspection of that kind of product would be very taxing in terms of labor. So what kind of technologies can we use, whether it's mass spectrometers type, spectrography type things on gas evaporation, or just computer vision, enhanced vision, looking at those types of technologies, and basically you're looking at opportunities in the fresh supply chain to either better leverage existing technology or bring in new technology to deliver a better eating experience to our customer.
That's super exciting. Yeah, in the innovation space, like, so where are you finding, like, are you, we have a partner in Rhode Island. We just launched this partner program where this medtech design company since 2014 internally has been one of their key researchers has been scouring the globe each month, identifying the latest and greatest medical technology and some other technology, and has been presenting it to the internal team. We just partnered with them to bring it to a broader audience. Like, how are you, so she's sourcing that for, their team. How are you finding that? Like, do you have a team that is researching, all these new technologies? Obviously, Venture Cafe Cambridge is one of the places that you're looking, I'm sure.
So there's a couple things going on. Definitely Venture Cafe is a key partner for us. We launched something in cooperation with Venture Cafe called the Seed Program, where supply chain innovators and startup companies come in, and such an exciting mix of collaborators come in through that program. Everything from kind of nanotech AI driven providers to a guy I'm working with who invented a new shopping cart wheel, who is awesome, and I love talking to him. So really broad range comes in through Venture Cafe, but also just in an organization like I do not have a research team for Fresh. I'm on the broader supply chain R&D team, but we have so many providers coming into us, and a big part of my job is just separating the kind of the real innovation from the conceptual, and the still early on. So we have a great because of the size of our organization, we have a great pipeline. And I guess what I'll say is the other thing that we deal with is because our organization is such an amalgam right now. It's 5 brands that have come together over the course of many, many years, and we have constraints in our supply chain, and we're really going through a huge insourcing transformation and a huge huge expansion of facilities. Because we're going through a lot of kind of fundamental transformation, what I really focus on is not so much the most innovative or the most out there technology, but what's the most absorbable technology. So low hanging fruit, like just connecting, we have temperature monitoring systems through multiple partners, just connecting that to our quality assurance system and just getting that little signal connected is actually a big job. But we're doing it, and it has a big impact because it's absorbable. Whereas something like bringing in a whole new technology to use, blockchain or AI or something like that, those are so big that they end up being more in the research phase at this point.
If with COVID, and we'll talk more about that later, but the need has arisen in the last 4 months that didn't exist prior to COVID, I'm sure, right? And having to do with the supply chain. Do you have a mechanism where you put out an RFP if you have a need, you need to find a solution for something?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just went through that with our forecasting and replenishment system, which I think we made a public announcement that we're last year that we started that company-wide implementation, and we went through an implementation system with that. We'll probably be going through a similar plan with our temperature monitoring system. So yeah, in terms of kind of like online, that's and that being a bigger channel, that's definitely how we'll respond to that is definitely going to define the next 3 to 5 years, I think. Because before COVID, right, online sales for us, and we were lagging in the market. Can everybody hear my children screaming, my child screaming?
Barely. Okay. I heard it a little while ago. No, I think
that's fine. It's obviously when there's an event that I'm actually.
You're more distracted by it than we are, I think.
Yeah, when I actually need to speak on a conference call, that's when they choose to truly yell their heads off. Yeah, so we were lagging in that home delivery space, and we probably still are somewhat. Certainly something we're thinking about, but it was 3% of our business, and on average, I think in the grocery space, it was 3 to 5. And I went to Grocery Shop, which was kind of one of the big industry conferences in Las Vegas, and there were a lot of speakers talking about it, and it was a big discussion topic, right? And it was over the next 5 years, we expect to see it double and triple and get up to 12, 13%.
When was that, Dennis?
That was last year, and then COVID hit, and it's between 15 and 20% for the industry. So the acceleration for that has been kind of shocking, and how we respond to that will absolutely define the next 5 years.
So Avi on my team just, he happens to have a restaurant and food background. And so I knew this would be an interesting session for him to attend. He said, on that point, how has COVID and the general sustainable, I think, pushes to source increasingly local products shifted your procurement process?
Yeah, hold on, I'm sorry, just one second.
It must be a screaming kid, everyone. Must allow for shorter farm to market. Yeah, that's a good question, Avi. I'm sure he'll be back. So even global supply chain leaders like Dennis get sidetracked while working during COVID with their children. All right, all set?
Yeah, sorry about that. Just
that's okay. So he was just saying,
schedules in a very small office environment.
The good news and a silver lining is we all get it. We've all been there, whether it's the kids, the dog, or the cat. So Avi was asking, the sustainable pushes to source increasingly local products. How has that shifted your procurement process? And he says, although there are complexities with increased suppliers, it must allow for shorter farm to market lag times.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And local suppliers is something I've been focusing on for researching and focusing on for quite a while. And this is an area that that we're absolutely, there's a lot of aspects to this, especially in fresh, right? One of the things you're talking about when you're talking about local suppliers is greenhouse technology. So advents in energy generation, local energy generation, vertical farming, all kinds of things like that, really kind of empower small greenhouse and mid-sized greenhouse producers to operate locally and shorten that supply chain. At the same time, you still have kind of more traditionally local suppliers like small farmers who have a lot of technology barriers. I would say a lot of our small and local farm providers are Amish. So try to send them an EDI order. Good luck. So in the technology we face, the barriers we face with those is really, most of our local sourcing comes from people on the phone with their voice talking to farmers and filling out spreadsheets and invoicing. And if you talk to my category managers across our 5 brands, they will all universally say, if I could get twice or 3 times as much local products in my store, I would sell them. But I can't because the coordination is extremely heavy. It is an extremely heavy lift. And then most of them are only going to deliver to a portion of our stores. So just getting them in the door it's usually a direct store delivery, which is at an added labor burden at the store. Now not only do you have to unload that morning's truck, but you have this other truck that comes in perhaps at an inconvenient time, and you have to unload that into the store. So those are the barriers. And then there's a lot of platforms in the market that are wholesale brokers for local product that masquerade as technology platforms. Mm-hmm. So it will basically take their local vendors, and onboard them, buy that product from them, list it on an online platform, and allow us some integration capability. I'm not a huge fan of those because it just like the DoorDashes and the Instacarts, it really it hurts consumers in terms of pricing. It hurts producers in terms of too big a share, and it costs us a lot of money. I'd rather just pure play technology platforms that, for a reasonable fee, kind of help broker those transactions directly between farmers, and enable us to do, especially as we better understand forecasting and cannibalization of local versus national product. It would allow us to better bring those into our DCs and alleviate both the procurement and the transportation burden.
Yeah, like my head hurts just thinking about that whole, supply chain, right? So I'm not just the executive director of Venture Cafe District Hall, but I'm also a mentor with a lot of startups and small businesses. And during COVID, at the end of March, we partnered with the state to extend our office hours program. We created the Rhode Island Small Business Tech Support Program. Really, we have helped over 300 small businesses in Rhode Island with their digital transformations. So a lot of brick and mortars, we've helped them build e-commerce sites and choose online payment platforms. And then we help them with everything from social media and email marketing, first SEO, and then we have to drive traffic to those e-commerce sites, right? So a lot of those businesses we have Pat's Pasture, which is a grower and a producer locally that historically sold at farmers markets or at their farm. So, and then we have Block Island Coffee, and she's in conversations with Super Stop and Shop, funny enough. But we have another in our, we brought MIT's venture mentoring service program to Rhode Island a couple of years ago. And I know we have a great guy that is making these really nice preserves. And we're working with him now on finding, how do we need a distributor.
Yeah.
And like, do you start small? Like right now he's having a hard time distributing to the small specialty stores and cafes he's distributing to. So I can only imagine, like, I think you illustrated it well, right? Like your people are literally on the phone with all these growers. Like that, right. That's not the most efficient way to operate for either side. So
and so I think the right distributor partner for a product like the preserves and like coffee is great, right? Because the distributor is going to help. The distributor is actually going to take possession of the product, and the distributor is going to help you with transportation. He's going to help you quite a bit with access. So we work with Davidson. We work with Shex. We work with UNFI. A lot of those distributors get small producers into our stores, and they help us smooth out things like making sure that all the right health and safety, licensing, all those things are in place, because they're in place for the distributor, and the distributor kind of manages that relationship. Where that gets really tough is in fresh, right? So that's where I think both fresh producers and fresh just innovators can really help with tech that connects producers directly to retailers.
Sounds innovators out there. It sounds like there's lots of opportunity in this space to create some technology to really help this, right? This is, I think it's important. It's good for the local economies. It's good for the environment. So that's exciting. Someone asked if you were open to LinkedIn follow-ups after this.
Absolutely.
Okay, and someone had a question about I thought it was blockchain. Maybe I just have blockchain on the brain. Jose from Rudy Startup, we offer refrigerated transportation service to buyer and producer of fruit and vegetable using blockchain to provide traceability.
Yeah, so Jose, I think you can follow up with me directly. I know you were part of at least the early rounds for the seed program. I guess my question there would be, are you actually offering transportation services with a technology component that can integrate into larger tracking systems, or are you offering a tracking system transportation platform into? So
We can wait to see, and maybe you take that offline. Blockchain is
yeah.
interesting. The state of Rhode Island is investing in blockchain, and I've been attending the Boston blockchain meetups. Super interesting
Mhm.
to see where that's going to go in all different sectors, how that's going to affect all different sectors. I want to jump back because I'm an early Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know, follower. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah, Gary
I'm
V.
guessing, Gary V. Guessing from your
Anybody that's been in wine retail knows Gary V.
I assume so. Can wine gallery stores can, you know, how is COVID affecting, you know, that part of the beverage industry?
You know, I've been out of wine for a while, to be honest. Um, I know since COVID started, I've definitely consumed a lot more of it.
Me too.
So
I'm trying to take off that wine weight now.
yeah, so sample of one, it's probably a boon to the industry.
I've been extremely appreciative of delivery services from wine stores
Yeah.
during COVID, and that's picked up. I think it's been interesting. Silver lining here, and I'm sure in other states as well, is that restaurants are now able to sell cocktails for pickup and delivery,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, I think the loosening up of kind of needing a business license and needing you know, a specific license for every different way you handle alcohol um, has been necessary, but it's also been kind of a silver lining to like let restaurants really try and figure out what works. Because, you know, again, when I was in wine retailer, we tried starting up our own delivery service, and we also started partnering with Drizzly. And what we saw partnering with Drizzly is it was really expensive for us because we had to provide the transportation, and then because there was transparency now to, you know, and commoditization of products. So like this wine from Josh Cellars, which everybody has, is now listed with everybody else's wine from Josh Cellars, and you're just going to go directly to the lowest cost provider who may be far away from you and have to spend more transporting it. So, so it, so really kind of allowing restaurants to experiment with their own models, I think will free up that space a lot.
Yeah, I've already experienced and seen that. What was that? Oh, did you get a chance to listen to the Masters of Scale Rapid Response podcast I talked about?
I have not yet. It's definitely on my list.
Yeah, it's interesting what Panera did and leveraged what, you know, they became a delivery service, a grocer delivery
Mm-hmm.
service, and that was very interesting. So anyone on this right now, if you're interested, there are a couple great Masters of Scale, the new Rapid Response series. The CEO for the larger organization that owns Shake Shack, he's been on twice on that program in the past 3 months, and then the CEO of Panera Bread. So specific to food and beverage, those are 3 different podcasts I highly recommend. Avi, who I knew would have lots of questions, has another good comment. How can smaller, mid-sized food producers who might not have the scale to profitably use a large-scale broker distributor connect with and pitch to Ahold? Great question, Avi, and that's kind of what I was getting at with like Block Island Coffee and some of our other local food producers. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, so it's a great question. To be perfectly honest, I don't know if you'd want to. Ahold is a very big you know, player, and our stores are big. And if you're very small and very niche, I think you want to have a more direct connection to your consumers until you really, if you're still refining your product, you're very small, you really want to direct connection to your consumer to understand what's the right sizing, what's the right packaging, what's the right, what's the right messaging, and even the right formulation. And you want to get all that down while you're still in small stores, farmers markets, direct to consumers. Once you're mid-size, depending on how you define mid-size, I don't think you're. I think you can definitely start, talking to distributors, who's most of who we do our work with, to be honest with you, at that scale. I think the people we source directly from are just very, very large producers, Nabisco, Kellogg, those kinds of things.
Awesome. I'm just sharing I just shared a couple of the episodes of the Masters of Scale. I shared the one with the CEO of Panera, and then I shared the most recent one with Danny Meyer, but the first one was really good as well. So, typical challenges food and bev entrepreneurs face with regard to supply chain. Can you give suggestions on how to address those? I think we started to talk about it with, but are there any other ideas? I'm thinking for innovators out there, because I always see when I run SWOT analysis in my head all the time, first identifying weaknesses and threats, and then thinking of opportunities and strengths. I just, if during our conversation, any ideas come to mind, solutions that need to be found, I think this is a great audience to pitch that to.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is, we're always talking about automation, and kind of everything from delivery to our warehouses to our pick and pack operations, within the online space. So, as the only thing limiting us from selling more online is the ability to fulfill those orders. And really there, I think what innovation is going to solve is what's the sweet spot between automation and humans taking over. So right now, the most efficient fulfillment centers online actually take full cases of product in uniform bins, and they bring those bins to manual pickers, and then those pickers kind of take the right amount and put them into other bins, so that last human step that's really complicated and really expensive to automate or to give to automation, we take that out. And a lot of automation is really like that. And a lot of technology is really like that. We can make anything. We can build, like, the potential for technology and AI, and we've seen these robot arms that can detect the difference between an egg and an orange and a bottle of Pepsi and pick any one of those up without any damage. It's really expensive and really slow to do it, right? Humans can still do it much better. So for the time being, finding that sweet spot between simple, effective, rapid implemented automation and kind of humans taking over is fairly big. And even in the delivery, so drones and fully automated delivery, the technology may seem like it's right around the corner, and it's certainly or already here, but the regulations and the safety of that is still a few years out. Well, Continental Tire did an amazing study where, like a design study, where they had a van that goes out and is automated assistant, but then it had bins in the van that get deployed. So, and those bins had kind of locks and codes so that only the consumer could get in the bin, and it comes back and picks up the bins later. So it went from a human that can do maximum of 5 deliveries in an hour to a human machine team that could do 30 or 40 deliveries in an hour, because it's just putting out these bins like on the street or next to houses or on stoops that, you know, do the last 5 yards, right?
Wow.
So it's separating that last mile into the majority of that last mile and that last 50 yards, that last 20 yards. So looking at that, you know, it's never going to be, we're not going to go all online. We're not going to go all automated. We're not going to eliminate physical retail. We're not going to eliminate humans in the supply chain. It's always about what's the happy medium that's most effective right now.
Mm-hmm. I know I'm one of those people that when I go to the grocery store, I don't want to do self-checkout. And I'm probably an anomaly with this group, but there are certain jobs that humans hopefully will always have. And,
Yeah.
you know, I have to ask you about pantry and your thoughts on, you know, meal kits, recipe kits, and, you know, are you as a large organization moving in that direction at all, or in any of your divisions? And I don't know, have you, you know, from your personal experience, yours was one of the first, wasn't it?
Yeah. So mine was one of the first retail recipe kit
Gotcha.
providers. And I had a lot of fun losing a lot of money. But so my thoughts on recipe kits is I'm still very bullish on recipe kits. I think what I learned from the pantry experience is, you know, I became a consumer of every recipe kit company, both mail order and retail, and I still am to this day. We have not, so I actually started 2 recipe kit companies. That's my dirty little secret. The first one was Pantry. The second one was one called Choppler, where we were up for about like 2 months. And we solved a lot of the production and waste and logistics challenges that we had at Pantry, but we just didn't have the legs to keep going. The right model isn't out there, is not out there for recipe kits. The right model is not going to a store and finding all the ingredients in one box. The right model is modular. So ingredients pre-kitted in small amounts that can be used across dozens or hundreds of recipes in a small area, where the consumer or an automated kind of assistant can assemble that recipe rapidly and put it into, you know, and take it out of the individual temp state and humidity state that those ingredients need to be in, and put them into a combined kind of tote, and get out of there. And the right model is also, it's got to be a little bit of all things to all people in terms of where people are on the planning spectrum, because so much, even though COVID and the move to online shopping has moved everybody a little more down the road into being a little bit more of a planner, right? You're still, no matter how new the new normal is, you're still going to have a very large segment of the grocery population that are just not planners, mm-hmm. and who want to participate in groceries, but in recipe kits, but don't want to plan a week out. So they want to be able to come into the store and or go online and within a couple hours get the product they want to experiment with. And so that kind of flexibility can only be achieved with kind of modularity, partnering with retail, making pickup available, click and collect available, and as well as subscriptions. So right now, just because Blue Apron was the first mover, recipe kits are way too anchored in subscriptions, and
or prescriptions, depending on the food, right?
Right, exactly. But way too anchored in the subscription model, and that hampers them.
It's been interesting to read about. I don't know if I read it in the New Yorker. Well, this weekend, I tried on the weekend to catch up on my stuff. There's I think it's in Brooklyn. There's a couple that forages and
Mhm.
sends like those forage packages. I'm a big fan of Barbara Kingsolver's Animal Vegetable Miracle, and my butterfly effect from chaos theory. Like if we would all shift to be hyper local in our decision making, I think that would, I spoke about it years, like 9 years ago. You know, it'd be neat to see us shifting to eating more seasonally, more locally, and all of our decisions being more local. But that's a whole other, pie in the sky dream of mine. Um,
So what have you seen that has been encouraging that moves us in that direction?
Stuff like that article I read in the New Yorker, right? They're foraging, so you can only forage what is happening now, right? And I have
Mhm.
a friend in Rhode Island who I've been not paying enough attention, but she's an herbalist and she teaches apprenticeships and everything, foraging to creating medicinals and tinctures and all kinds of stuff, to teas and whatnot. I love that. But I think what you were talking about, like we're not there yet, but I think this is a really fun, one of the silver linings is like you hear about those like fancy restaurants in Manhattan that are now putting together these meal kits, right? That's cost
Yeah.
prohibitive, like for the common person can't afford or have access to that. And even the forager, they only can service certain local areas. We
Mhm.
have a company in Rhode Island, really interesting company. One of the founders was in the military. He was in the Navy, and he came to Rhode Island because he and his wife were both in the Navy, and she was teaching at the Naval War College. And he always wanted to be a chef, so he ended up going to Johnson and Wales and became a chef. And he was so discouraged that as a chef, he had, and this was years ago, had such a hard time sourcing, farm to table, like in the restaurants he worked in. So fast forward years, he and his partner created What's Good, which is a delivery platform.
Yeah.
So they started off in Rhode Island. Now they're in Boston and other areas in the country. And they're continuing to iterate and innovate their platform. So their newest model, they just sent an email to all of us who are already members asking if we want to be early, kind of do the early trial for restaurant delivery. So they are, I have a friend, Yorganics, that makes like this Your Bomb that you can use on everything. She makes laundry products that are all natural. So local producers, local growers, Blackbird Farms for their meat, or, a lot of vegetable farms. You can source all of that through the What's Good app. And during COVID, they started delivering, you could order things from local cafes and whatnot, and now they're expanding to more restaurants. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to develop. And if they'll also, we had a scare where we thought my daughter might have COVID and she had to get tested. So we were on lockdown all of a sudden. I couldn't go to our local grocery store. And it was really difficult to get deliveries because you were all, those of you who were already doing it were swamped. And then the
Yeah.
smaller companies hadn't figured it out yet. So what do you see? Like, I know we have to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. Like, what do you see as some of the silver linings, like those that I was just talking about? And where do you think there's some teeth? Like, where are we going to see more growth and innovation? And what have you seen that hasn't worked so well?
Um,
I know there was a lot there.
yeah, there's a lot there. I think so. Silver linings. I think pushing the move to online has and pushing consumers to experiment with new models, pushing consumers to cook more at home has been great. I think we have a local cafe here that um, has is kind of just in crisis mode. Um, Stood up a really quick website that says, here's all your coffee drinks, here's all the sandwiches we make, and by the way, here's like paper products, and we source zucchini in crazy amounts, so feel free to buy some, and cabbage and oat milk from from the barista counter. You can buy that, right down to um, toilet tissue. Everything was available from this website, from this cafe, and you could stop by and pick it up. So kind of dynamic, innovative models like that were really good to see. I think as we learn more, we'll start to see more consistency in terms of, you know, do you really need to order everything online, or can you come up to a window? Can we do that in a safe way? One thing I'm really encouraged about is there's a project out of McGill University right now. I guess with it, I could talk about this for another 45 minutes, but there are a lot of things we did well at Stop and Shop. We had a lot of wins where for example, we partnered with Cisco and we partnered with US Foods, who are restaurant suppliers who we don't normally work with, who found themselves with inventory that they can't sell, and we need inventory because we can't keep the doors on the hinges, right? Great that we were anecdotally able to think about, oh, I know this guy at US Foods and he's got this problem, and we were able to make that connection. But there were a lot of failures, right? A lot of farmers, dairy farmers, both locally and nationwide, dumped hundreds and thousands of gallons of milk out in the field because the supply chain wasn't there to package and deliver it. And we could have used that milk. We were selling milk like crazy. So that was heartbreaking. And there was crop producers that had that same problem and animal producers that had that same problem. So finding a system to make those connections between producers, packagers, transporters, and retailers, that's one of the projects at McGill University is looking at that, kind of a digital backbone for the food economy, continental scale that says, I have milk. I need packages that can hold milk and people that can package milk to bridge me and this other person who needs milk right now, right? To make those kinds of connections not anecdotal, not accidental, not like, oh, we got to win because this guy knows this guy knows this guy, but create structure in them, both on the regular day-to-day and in crisis mode. I think that is a huge opportunity in a place we, had both wins and failures.
I see blockchain in the future.
Sure, and I love blockchain, and this is a great note to add on. I love blockchain. We're investing deeply into blockchain, but blockchain is a data storage layer, and you have to think about the data creation layer and the data absorption layer above and below blockchain. So if everybody in that supply chain isn't scanning, entering data, and this is a new step that we're asking people to do, there's a cost to that next step that you either have to automate through IoT, which also has a cost, or you have to, force people to do it, which cost. So what's the most efficient way to create that data that we can then store on the blockchain? And what's the most efficient way to absorb and react to those things?
It kind of brings us full circle right back to what we were talking about. All of your people that are talking to these local growers that, might be the Amish that not interested in IoT.
Right, exactly.
But we need, and that goes back to a lot of these companies that we're mentoring, right, in the small business tech support program. Like, how do we meet them where they're at and help them with these digital transformations, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Full circle conversation there. Yulia, do we have to wrap it up now that it's 2:45?
If you would like to continue, please feel free to continue. Otherwise, feel free to wrap up. It's completely up to you.
Awesome. It was great to meet you, Dennis, and talk. Thank you, Yulia, for the opportunity.
Yeah, likewise. This was great. And I really appreciate your guidance in the conversation. Without you, I definitely would have been rambling.
I think I get to ramble too. I got to rambling.
It was so wonderful working with you both. It was great having you here. Such a wonderful conversation. I think it's a perfect way for us to start a good Thursday gathering. Thank you so much. So everyone in the room, if you have a second, please let us know how we did. Just click on the link and there's a 1-question survey. Rate us 1 to 10. Let us know how we did. And we have another session starting in just 14 minutes, and it's going to be on how to run an inspiring meeting virtually. Thank you, everyone. I hope to see you all in the next session at 3 p.m. Bye-bye.